Welcome everybody to London Futurists. My name is David Wood. We live in a time when many people are angry about politicians, when many people are contemptuous of politicians, when many people fear politicians. But we humans have a great tradition of finding new solutions to bad situations, new solutions that draw on cumulative insight from science, engineering, economics, art, and philosophy. So in this discussion, the question is, what are the options for better politics? A politics that accelerates liberty for everyone. Liberty from ignorance, liberty from disease, liberty from violence, liberty from injustice, liberty from tyranny, liberty from fear. And what insights are brought to this questions by the worldwide community of transhumanists, a community with the vision that humanity can reach significantly higher states of consciousness, ability, experience, and freedom. To discuss these questions, London Futurists is joined today by a number of leading transhumanist thinkers who I'll now ask to briefly introduce themselves. Jay, the floor is yours.
My name is Jay Friedenberg. I'm a psychology professor at Manhattan College, so very happy to be here. Thank you, David, very much for hosting us. I'm going to talk a little bit about I'm going to get on a little bit of a soapbox and talk about libertarianism and its relationship to transhumanism, and then hopefully get a very interesting and wide-ranging discussion going.
How are you coping in New York area with the lockdown, Jay?
I have to admit, it's been pretty stressful. I mean, my wife and I live here in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, so we are in the heart of the death capital of the world. Things are a lot better now than they were 2 months ago, but we've been pretty much here the whole time, and I've had to have been very careful, I must say. Not everybody practices social distancing, unfortunately.
Well, let's keep being careful. Jose, a few words from you?
Yes, hello. This is Jose Cordeiro connecting from Madrid, Spain, which is one of the epicenters of the pandemic. And we have had 15,000 people who died here extraofficially. That is why I am protecting myself. This is the City Hall of Madrid in my back. And well, I am an engineer from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and I have always believed that technology is the major force to change the world. And that is what I do in my life. I grew up in South America, studied in North America, and currently I am living in Europe. And I am the Vice Chair of Humanity Plus, and I was candidate for the European Parliament in the last elections in 2019.
Thanks, Jose. Natasha, a few words from you, please.
Hi, I'm Natasha Vita-Moore. Thank you, David. Your eloquent introduction, it really was inspirational, so thank you for that. And Jay, it's a pleasure to be here with you and Jose as well. I'll just start with saying that my area of interest is what drives people to support or deny social and cultural advances. My academic background is a doctorate in technologies and sciences of life extension. I have a master's in the philosophy of technology and a second master's in future studies or foresight studies. My research includes technological breakthroughs and scientific research within the longevity industry, having created a scientific breakthrough with vitrification of the microscopic simple animal, the C. elegans. A professor at a university for the past 8 years that focuses almost exclusively on technology, AI, computer science, network security, programming, games, etc. My interest now, and it's interesting because I'm more driven now than ever to bring the humanities or transhumanities more into culture and with the aesthetics and philosophy to lifelong learning. So thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here.
And thanks, Natasha. Are you in Arizona?
Yes, I'm in Scottsdale, and interestingly enough, Scottsdale has had 3,000 cases. Yesterday, we keep on climbing. It's getting worse and worse. And finally, The governor of Arizona said he's going to leave it up to the mayors within their particular districts to either mandate masks and social distancing or not. And thank goodness in Scottsdale, where I live, which is, it's a resort community, it's a high-end community of athletics and sports and entertainment. Finally, it's mandated that everyone must wear masks. And Phoenix has followed suit, and Tempe, which Arizona State University, the so-called most innovative school in the United States, had not practiced it, now it is. So I wish people would get smart, and Jay and Jose, I hope you're safe, and David as well. We have to wear masks and social distance. This is not a game that we're playing here.
Well, let's keep wise, keep smart, keep safe, keep truly human. Jay, I think you've got some thoughts you'd like to share with us to kick this conversation forwards.
Yes, so I have prepared some information here. I'm going to share this with you now. Hopefully everybody can see this.
Liberty and Transhumanist Goals, a brief manifesto.
I don't want to take up too much time here, but I want to provide a brief overview to cover some information that I think will serve as a useful framework for our upcoming discussion. And one of my main points is that transhumanism has many aspects. It sort of like has a technical side, but it also obviously has a political side. If Charlie were here, he could certainly address that, because we are running people for political office. So what I would like to show is that political ideology cannot really be separated from transhumanism, because transhumanism has a social agenda. Now, as I'm sure all of you are aware, we seem to be at a type of crossroads in human history now where things are quite tumultuous. We have, we have a pandemic virus taking place. We have economic depression. We've got political unrest, racial protests. It is a very interesting time to live. And it's got me thinking a bit about politics and ideology and where we want to go in terms of the future. So if we look at recent events, I think we can see them in terms of two opposing forces. On the one hand, we have the sort of a threat to a liberal democracy, which is the rise of totalitarianism and autocracy, where we tend to have force concentrated at the top of the social hierarchy. And then on the other hand, also looking at recent events, we see the rise of what we might call communitarianism, or group decision-making by, sometimes people call it mob rule, or tribalism, in which one tribe or social group tries to exert its influence over the majority. So I'd like to say that both of these, I don't think, are very good alternatives, because they're both rooted in two failed 20th century political systems, these being both dictatorship on the one hand and socialism on the other. The first is about concentration of power within a single individual or social class, social group. And the second was supposed to be open, fair, distributed, egalitarian, but in practice ended up being essentially dictatorship if you look at communist regimes around the world. So I would like to pose libertarianism as a viable political ideology and alternative for these two forces that we see the rise of today. As I'm sure many of you know, libertarianism is a political ideology that's based on small democratic government, a capitalist economy, and constitutionally defended individual rights. What's nice about libertarianism is that you've got a distribution of power. So power is sort of balanced and spread through different social organizations like governments, corporations, and religious groups. And the guiding principles behind libertarianism are freedom, of course, and individual choice. Now, I love this. If you go to the smallestpoliticalquiz.com, or you look that up on Google, you will see this come up. It's actually a very short questionnaire, and I encourage everybody to take it because it will place you on this map and show you where you belong in terms of the political space. So most of us tend to think of politics as being a left-right continuum, where we have on the left liberalism, extreme left would be tribalism, communalism, and on the right conservatism, and if we go again to the extreme right, we would have totalitarianism. But that's just a single dimension, and there's another one which this website shows, which is that if we go along this up-down y-axis, that we also have group rights and individual rights. So if we go farther down, we go towards governments that are more statist and big government. As we go up, we sort of trend towards more libertarian, individual rights-based types of governments. And in the middle, of course, we have centrism. Now, I really like this representation because it kind of shows that in recent days, we've been tugged left and right, okay? So that typically we kind of bounce back and forth along the this x-axis. And historically, democratic governments tend to become big governments, so they tend to trend downwards on this graph. I would like to see us go, in fact, upwards, more in this sort of green shaded portion of the space. We're familiar with the transhumanist goals. Just want to briefly go over these here. Transhumanism sees people not as fixed entities. It doesn't see human nature as a static quantity, but instead as our being capable of being altered, augmented, improved, etc., through the use of technology. But if we look at these two opposing political organizations, we see that their approach to technology varies. Conservatives and ruling, dominating political parties tend to be opposed to change because it threatens stability. And they would tend to use technology if it augments or enhances their own power and keeps them in power. Tribalism, on the other hand, sometimes welcomes change, but typically if it's only advantageous to that own particular social group's ideals. And as we've seen in recent days, they will sometimes aggressively suppress alternative points of view. So political transhumanist compatibility. I would argue that libertarianism is consistent with the betterment of human nature and is based on transhumanist values. First of all, it's open-ended towards new ideas. Libertarians are very pro-technology. They're pro-actionary. It's a liberal culture, so they believe in introducing new medicines, new treatments for disease and so forth. So they tend to be not precautionary, but more pro-actionary. Libertarianism also emphasizes choice and free will, which puts decision-making not in the hands of politicians or in a domineering social group, but instead in your hands, in the hands of individuals. Okay, that's what I really like about it. So it prevents this concentration of power that you sometimes see when particular groups come to government. And then I'm going to leave open, again, I don't want to dominate this, but I'm going to leave this open to talk about individuality and morphology and how we can change our bodies and how that is also encompassed within the libertarian framework. And then should we run out of topics to talk about, which I seriously doubt, we can also bring up some other very interesting topics to me, which include computational superintelligence and super ethics, and whether or not how these bode for actual AI governance, and whether or not we want to, whether superintelligence and super ethics could actually take governance out of the hands of humans, and whether or not that would necessarily be a good thing. So, so I hope this has opened things up a bit for the flow of ideas, and I will stop here and let you guys take over.
Many thanks, Jay. There's already questions popping into the chat. In due course, we'll take questions that are in the separate questions and answer window by preference. If people in due course have short questions which they submit in there, hopefully everybody watching can find that window and you can vote on each other's questions. But the chat is raising some issues too about potential drawbacks of small government in days when there are big major risks around. But let's not look too much at that for the moment. Jose Cordero, you are somebody who has also stood on a transhumanist platform for political election.
Yes, hello, David and everybody. Actually, I wanted to start showing a short 1-minute video about my platform in English. Obviously, my campaign was in Spanish because I'm based in Spain, in Madrid, but this short 1-minute video, it's a very good example. So David, can you show it?
Yes, let's watch this video, everybody.
Most political discourse is about details such as corporation tax rates, subsidies for farming, interminable trade negotiations, and who wrote what in which newspaper. But what if politicians are missing the things that really matter? Economist Robert Solow won the Nobel Prize in Economics for showing that 90% of economic growth comes from technology. Yet the EU's investment in artificial intelligence amounts to less than 1% of agricultural subsidies. What politics needs is people who understand how technology, like artificial intelligence, will develop. Jose Cordero is a technologist with degrees from MIT and a PhD in engineering, who has written best-selling books on how we can use technology as the ultimate force for good in society. Support Jose as member of the European Parliament this May. He will focus on how we can work together to build a better future for all of us by investing in technology like artificial intelligence, genetics research, and nanotechnology.
Jose, that was May last year, wasn't it?
Yes, the elections, it was the last elections in which the United Kingdom participated before Brexit. And actually several candidates in Europe, including in Britain, had platforms about longevity or transhumanist ideas. It was a very quick campaign. Basically, in 2 months I was campaigning, I got 7,000 votes. Which for a quick campaign was not too bad. Actually, one of the people who voted for me is watching this. So Jordi, hello Jordi, I know you voted for me and my friends also in other places. We had another friend, Attila Sordas, who was also with me at Singularity University in the year 2000. He also ran in England for a position and he got about 3,000 votes. And then in Germany, we have an immortality party, which is called Health Research Party. And they got 71,000 votes. Again, that is still not enough to be elected to the European Parliament, but it's a very good beginning. Additionally, there are other parties who have not campaigned for the European elections, but for local elections in France, in Belgium, in Italy, in Poland. So this is spreading. And obviously in the USA, we have had the Transhumanist Party. And then also even in Russia there is an immortality party as well, a longevity party. So these ideas are coming to the public. And I like very much the picture, the diagram that Jay showed, which was actually, I don't know if you know, developed at MIT by a political scientist from MIT. And that was part of my campaign. But I said, actually, I am not from the left and I am not from the right. I am from the future. I am from the future. And this was a very good point in the campaign. So many people like that. Again, I wish we had more time for the elections, but it was very quick, 2 months, and we had 7,000 votes. Anyway, there have been other two very, very incredible candidates who have not been humans, who have been robots. As you probably remember, in the year 2016, IBM Watson, which is the artificial intelligence from IBM, Watson, actually ran for president, and you can still check the website. This was obviously a parody, but you can check it, Watson for President 2016. But where it actually happened was in Japan, in Tokyo, in 2018, there was a female robot who ran to be mayor of one of the districts of Tokyo. And she came on third on the election, third candidate on the election. She was developed by some engineers in the university in Tokyo. So I say this because I believe probably in 10 or 20 years, I will actually vote for an artificial intelligence. I will vote for a robot because they will probably know more. They will be totally connected to internet. They would be better connected to the people. And actually they could take more decisions, better decisions, faster decisions. In fact, last month in London, there was an announcement at the Alan Turing Institute, which is based obviously on the fantastic British scientist Alan Turing, who worked a lot on artificial intelligence. And he created the Alan Turing test that soon you will not know if you are talking to a human or if you are talking to an artificial intelligence. In any event, the Alan Turing Institute announced last month that they are working on artificial intelligence that could actually rule a country. And they are doing the first experiment in Mexico with another think tank in Mexico, which is called CIDE, CIDE in Spanish. And this think tank in Mexico with the Alan Turing Institute has developed this artificial intelligence to check the Sustainable Development Goals. I think this is going to be fantastic. In fact, I don't know why it took so long, because I have been playing SimCity for many years, and I am pretty sure you know SimCity. And now there is SimCity 3000, and there is SimCity even for other planets. In SimCity, it's a simulation of a city, of a world, of a planet, of a civilization, and you can see the costs and benefits of any politics. So finally, to bring it into the human field, it has come from SimCity simulations into the Alan Turing Institute in London. To me, again, this is really fantastic, and I would vote for a robot in 10 to 20 years, not for a human, because artificial intelligence will be eventually more intelligent than us. And that is why we also need to join artificial intelligence. If we want to become more intelligent, we should join with artificial intelligence. As someone says, if you cannot beat it, join it. So if we cannot beat artificial intelligence, we should join it. And I am not afraid of artificial intelligence. I am not. What I am afraid of is human stupidity. That really worries me, human stupidity. And there is so much human stupidity in this world, which is amazing. In fact, in Spain, because I have been in politics, I can tell you, we have had for the last 2 years, a coalition between the socialists and the communists. Horrible coalition, socialists and communists. And in the almost 2 years in power, the only thing that they have been able to do is to talk about the past and to open the grave of the dictator Francisco Franco. This is horrible. In 2 years, lost politics, only talking about the past. I want to talk about the future, which is where we are going to live. We are not going to live in the past. We are going to live in the future. So I support artificial intelligence. I am not afraid of artificial intelligence, but as I said, I am afraid of human stupidity. And finally, most transhumanists, we believe on 3 principles or 3 pillars: super intelligence, super longevity, and super happiness. So if we have the technologies to be super intelligent and super longevous and super happy, would you not want to use them? And I think we will. Even stupid politicians eventually will be more intelligent with artificial intelligence, living longer, living healthier, and living happier lives. So this is my little introduction to talk about the future of humanity, transhumanity, post-humanity, and the world.
Many thanks, Jose. I guess we could ask you in due course, if you are indeed worried about human stupidity, which I think we all are, isn't there a risk that human stupidity coupled with artificial intelligence will do more dangerous things? We have to figure out how we can address that combination. For those of you wondering where our 4th panelist is, Charlie Cam, he has been having trouble tracking down the invitation to take part in this meeting. We have been resending it to him. Somehow it hasn't quite reached him. He is still trying to engage. We might have him with us shortly. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand over to Natasha Vitamoa for your opening thoughts on this. And then we'll go round again, by the way. We'll have a brief follow-ups from Jay and Jose and Natasha to build and contrast where appropriate on what each other has said.
Thank you. I'm going to approach this as politics being a human construct. Politics are not a human right. They're not intrinsic or essential to our biological structure or our technological structure. Politics is a construct that we've created in order to organize our society to follow certain rules and regulations for cooperation. And that serves a very important purpose. So one might ask, well, what about birds in flight? What is their political structure when a bird takes the lead and moves the flight path? Well, it seems like it's already been preordained which bird is going to take that role. Maybe they sit in the morning and have a conference on who's going to do that and at what time, but not so. Birds are spontaneous. There is no one bird that's better than another bird to direct. It just occurs. And that type of spontaneous order is necessary and important in certain structures or elements of society. However, in the human society, because we're driven by our reptilian brain, call it fight or flight, whatever it is, unfortunately, we're still sequestered to that portion of our brain which psychologically enables certain good things, but takes away from good things and keeps us tethered to a lower common denominator in our intelligence. So I'm going to talk about just a few things, but before I do, so Jay presented very nicely, and thank you, Jay, a libertarian structure of why libertarian politics would be, in his estimation, the logical, intelligent way to go. And Jose, you didn't say what your platform was, but I'm assuming it was libertarian, is that correct?
It was from the future,
From the future,
not from
okay,
the
good.
left and not from the
So
right.
not left, not right, up. So okay, and then David, you didn't set any precedent for the structures to talk about. Well, what I'm noticing in the transhumanist community is largely a couple of different schools of thought that are wrestling. One is libertarian, the other one is techno-progressive. Techno-progressive simulated from a conference I remember in Paris I was one of the forming committee. David, you were there. Jose, I can't remember if you were there or not, but it became something other than its original intention. So it's more sequestered with Marxism and socialism at the moment. I don't know if that's the true flavor of techno-progressives, but let's just say it can go in that way. It also can go more towards a libertarian way because there is no quantifiable prerequisite or set of tenets that would keep techno-progressive views structured to any one political point of view. It just depends who's in charge, who's speaking the loudest, who has the most attention. And it's usually that's how political views are woven into the fabric of our culture. And someone will self-appoint him or herself or themselves to do this, and it may not be the correct thing to do. So you wonder, where's the spontaneity? There's something lovely about grassroots. People form and come together because there's a need, and that need is propelled by a desire to fill a gap or bridge a gap. And therefore, it's necessary and important. Otherwise, politics becomes more of a game. Might as well sit at a keyboard and play the game with your joystick. However, putting all of that aside, I'm going to say my particular position is neither right, left, up, or down. I take a look at politics as being something that will help organize the way we do business, the way that we help people with our healthcare, the way that we look at our economy, the way that we look at our health and well-being, our happiness, whatever the consequences and circumstances of humanity in society are. We need that type of structure. We just don't need it to dictate to us, and we do not need it to send us down the wrong path. So therefore, we have to navigate the flight path, and we have to be very careful that we have it in steady, healthy condition. Currently, around the world, there is no political structure that is healthy, in practice, let's say, because no one is happy with their political structure, so that means they're not working. No matter if it's up, down, right, or left, they're simply not working. So being that as a given, we might say, well, who's coming up with the ideas, the the models that could better form this. Well, Jay gave an example, Jose gave an example. I think they're really great. However, I'd like to turn this to looking at the human need section. And I'm just going to glance down at my notes here. Perpetual progress, the perennial aspect of humanity and society and the environment, we're constantly changing and growing. So no one structure as a static concept will ever work. They have to be renewed, refreshed. So if we look at politics as being perennial, then it might better make sense. So that means we have to keep on updating and changing, but we do that with our software. We do that with our security. It's something that we have to do. We do that with our own bodies and our minds. Self-transformation and a self-responsibility is essential. We can't have old world thinkers dictating to a new world of people. And this is something that's very important, especially in the domain of ethics. And if we take a look in the United States at President George W. Bush Bioethics Committee, it was all white male Christians. How on earth, with anyone with any common sense, would allow or agree to that? For one thing, here in the United States, we have many different religions, many different political views, and that's important. Around the world, there's not just one gender or one color of skin. We're all different. So there needs to be, if we're going to have ethics committees, whether it's machine ethics for AI or machine learning or any advances with AGI and supercomputers, we need a diverse set of eyes on the issues. Another one is optimism. We need rational, practical optimism to be able to even see the future. If we're constantly looking at the past in the rearview mirror, finding all the problems that we did, it's not going to work. But unlike Jose, I think history must be paired with the future, because the history will tell us the mistakes that we made, also remind us anthropologically, philosophically, culturally about the successes that we had. For example, someone in the chat window said, well, what's the definition of transhumanism? And I'm going, oh God, here we go again. Okay, come on, it was defined. It was defined, people had different definitions, but there's one definition of transhumanism. There's not many different transhumanisms. There's one transhumanism. So what do I mean by that? I mean, there is transhumanism as a philosophy, as a worldview. How you practice it is your right, your choice. You may practice it one way or another way, but it doesn't change the core of what that philosophy means. To try to rewrite philosophies is foolish. We must remember we can advance them, we can alter them to meet the current needs of society, and that's important. The same goes for our political structures. They all need overhauling. Intelligent technology, I agree with Jose 100% on our technology must be intelligent, but we need to steer that. So who's programming our technology? Who's programming the AI with Python or creating code, C++, whatever it is? Who's doing it? How are they doing? And what are the rules? Now remember, in my introduction, I said I've been teaching for 8 years at a technology university. It's not humanities, it's technology. And my students are cybersecurity, they're computer scientists, they code AI, they code games, and I work with them on a daily basis. So when I'm talking about intelligent technology and I'm teaching ethics to these students, and I'm seeing that they don't understand moral dilemmas or the history of ethics or any of the theories, that concerns me, because you need to apply theories and ways dilemmas can be presented to understand propositions, because the future is all about propositions. So that's another area I think we need to pay attention to.
Great. So if I can draw you to a close here, Natasha,
Yes.
I'd like to let Charlie come in. You have said so many interesting and fascinating things. It's really hard to
In
know
my closing,
how to
I'll just say that one thing I think is very important, I think we need to put politics aside, parties aside, and think about a PAC. We already have very well-established parties within the structure as it is. We need to go in and rework it and fix it. Now, okay, there's a gap that needs to be mitigated. And my view is that with a PAC that Gabe Rothblatt and I worked on a year ago, I think that could be an incredible solution to many of the problems that we face. So thank you very much.
Well, I'm very much in favor of building bridges or building pacts or even building packs to help us to transcend the divisions, because exactly as you said, no political structure today is anything like ideal. We have to be able to keep reinventing things. And if we get stuck in the past, then we will not be able to find the better solutions. let's pick up these discussions again in a minute. But first, I want to come to somebody who does actually represent a particular party. Charlie Cam, thank you so much for being patient with the technology. Now, as you are a presidential candidate, you can just drop straight into any discussion and take it off without even having heard what's gone before. So if you unmute yourself, we'd love to hear a little bit about yourself and about your views on what does transhumanism suggest and imply for a better politics.
You got me?
Yes.
There you go. All right, thank you. Sorry for that. And sorry for the delay. You know, I'm a transhumanist, so I know nothing about technology. You know, I was lucky enough to come in on the end there, towards the probably somewhere towards the end of Natasha's brilliant summation there of certain things that I agree with, all of them. You know, as far as my background, I studied biochemistry at the University of Illinois, and I did go to I attended a med school abroad at university in Ross Medical School in Dominica. I've been involved in transhumanism for a long time. Most of the education that's relevant is probably from books that I read by Richard Feynman and Drexler and Ray Kurzweil over the years. I just early on figured out that living was better than dying. And I got really excited about when I found out about the World Transhumanist Association. I wanted to find out more about that, which led me to finally attending the 2005 conference, which was in Caracas, Venezuela, which was hosted by Jose Cordero. And and that's where I also met Natasha for the first time. And it was brilliant. And it really, that was also the year Ray Kurzweil came out with his book, Singularity is Near. So those two things inspired me. I wanted to host my own conference in Chicago, which I did. It was a 3-day conference because I wanted to spread the word of transhumanism out to the world. I thought it's the most important idea we have now. That conference, we had some amazing speakers, including Natasha and Jose, Max Moore, Anders Sandberg, Aubrey de Grey, Ben Goertzel, Martine Rothblatt.
Marvin Minsky.
Yeah, Marvin Minsky.
Don't interrupt, let him go, because he's limited by time.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't want to take up forever, but the point is that the conference went very well. We even had William Shatner. I brought him because I wanted to try to get exposure for this movement as much as possible. Since that time, I've been working with Ray Kurzweil, promoting his books. I've helped produce his films. I have produced a lot of music videos and songs about this movement. And I was lucky enough to present those again in 2018 in Madrid, which Jose hosted again. And of course, 2019 with you, David, at the Transvision Conference in London. And Natasha and I were actually working on Transvision 2020 till COVID got in the way. So that's been postponed till next year. But, you know, as far as my beliefs in all this, I kind of stand with what they said. I'm not really about being left or right on this issue. It's more about being what's the future. And we have to embrace technologies that are there for us. I think if we're really if I'm gonna talk about this as if I'm a presidential candidate and I want to address these views, you know, individually, then let's go to something like, you know, overhauling the economy. And one of the first things I would think about would be education. We have an electorate that doesn't understand things, but more importantly, we have leadership that doesn't get it. I mean, we have current leadership that tried to ignore the COVID virus or then just said it was going to go away magically. And then it was a suggestion about injecting bleach or something ridiculous. You know, you can't have that kind of unqualified education in office. And also we had Congress who had to try to interview Mark Zuckerberg, and they didn't know how to ask questions because they weren't fluent with the current technology. So I think it's important that education is better updated throughout the population. I think that it might be a good idea to consider free college for everybody because we need that kind of higher level education in everybody's brain so they can really understand what's going on. And if we can't afford it, although I think we can, if we really supplement it with online education, which is a lot less expensive, then, if we can't do that, then maybe we can even just upgrade our earlier, education with grade school and high school. There's no reason why we shouldn't be having courses for young people that teach them critical thinking, logic, even in single digit ages. Mozart was composing amazing works when he was a little kid. So there's a lot of stuff we can do to re-educate our system of people, because that's how we will solve problems like racism and all the other things that are really coming to the forefront right now. So I don't know. I don't want to go on and on here. I at least just wanted to pick out at least that issue to start.
Well, that's an issue close to my own heart. I do think rebooting education has got to be one of the core priorities of the next 5 or 10 years. As Jose pointed out, there's so much that technology can do, but we need to understand it. We need to move away from the Hollywood dystopian visions, the entertaining fantasies which aren't so based on reality, and we need to understand what is possible now and what is going to be possible probably pretty soon. We need to teach everybody about exponentials, because we are all dominated, whether we like it or not, by linear thinking. We need to teach people about probabilities and going beyond hard binary choices, because we live in a world that's actually more complex. And we need to teach people about envisioning scenarios, evaluating scenarios, and making scenarios real. So all of these parts of education, I would fully support that. Let's now go around quickly one more time, because we had some fascinating opening remarks, but let's try and now catch up some time. I'll give you 2 minutes each, going around in the same order, if there's parts you want to pick up. And Jay, my question for you, if you want to add it to the mix, is with a small government, you avoid the problems of big government, and the problems of big government are many. But how does a small government cope with problems of big business, or the military-industrial complex, or with other large powers, or other large threats, such as COVID? How do you get the benefits of big government without having the drawbacks of big government? Or do you think it's sufficient to stand up to monopolies just from a small group? Jay?
Well, the question of monopolies, of course, is a good one, and has been raised as one of the major criticisms of libertarianism and small government approach. But I see the problem more not so much as a monopoly, because in a true free market system, you tend to not get monopolies. What happens is that naturally you have political corruption, where politicians take part in the corporate process. And that is actually much more of a problem, is separating the political sphere from the economic sphere. If the economic sphere is not, if you have minimal regulation and you have competition and you have free market forces at work, it tends to equilibrate. You tend to eliminate dangers like monopolies. The real monopoly and the real danger is government, because they have a monopoly on the use of force, right? It's only the government that has the tanks and the guns and the planes and that can attack you. We've seen with police, right, that there's abuse of power that can take place within police forces. It's another example of the growth, of the dangerous growth of government. So, Thomas Jefferson said that the tendency is for government to grow and for liberty to yield. And I think, he was prescient in seeing that so many centuries, so long ago, because you do have this trend where countries can start off free market, more capitalistic, more limited, but then over the growth of time, you get corruption, you get the growth of the executive branch. And these are the things that truly threaten a free society. If you look at the US government, it is really a danger that the size of the executive branch, it's just grown. Talk about exponential growth. It has grown exponentially, whereas the other checks and balances like the Supreme Court and the Senate and the House have stayed relatively the same size. So, I would argue that going forward in a transhumanist world, that we need to preserve freedom by limiting the concentration of power.
Limiting the concentration of power, absolutely, because as Lord Acton, the 19th century historian, said, power tends to corrupt absolute power corrupts absolutely. I think this is not just a matter for political power. I think it's power in business. Inexorable laws of the market often mean that successful companies do very well. They're very nimble, they're very agile to start off with, but then they get larger, and there is more tendency for them to become corrupt as well, sadly. So I liked your emphasis, Jay, on checks and balances. It's like the human body. The human body is not dominated by one organ. We survive because of a rich interplay of different systems. And so I look to the politics of the future as having lots of interplay too. We can discuss that more in a minute, perhaps. Jose, what's your comments on what you've heard so far?
Well, we are in a political battle always, and as I try to emphasize, I like to say I am not from the left and I am not from the right, I am from the future. But beyond political ideas, I think general ideas are fundamental. That is why I am so happy, so proud that with David Wood, we co-wrote this book behind me. In Spanish, La Muerte de la Muerte, then in Portuguese, A Morte da Morte. This year is coming out in 2 more major world languages. It will be coming out in Russian and in French. And next year, hopefully, in the largest 2 languages in the world, Chinese and English. So the idea is to put these ideas of longevity, transhumanism, artificial intelligence to the public in general, beyond political parties. In fact, something else I learned while in London with David Wood is that they created a group called the APPG, which is the All-Party Parliamentary Group, which is led by Tina Woods and some other people. And basically, they are trying to take the idea of longevity into all parties from left to right, so that the ideas of longevity are everywhere. So this is a very interesting approach as well. Part of my political platform was the creation of the European Agency for Anti-Aging, which there is no agency for that in Europe. In the USA, there is the National Institute on Aging, NIA, but there is no Institute on Anti-Aging in Europe. So that was one of my goals. And again, I keep on campaigning because it is very important. If we are going to make any of this reality, we need to conquer aging and live longer and longer. And one final point, David, to your previous question about stupid humans with intelligent artificial intelligence, I think this is one of the problems of Nicholas Machiavelli. Machiavelli said that there are bad people and they are few, but they are connected. The good people are most of us, but sometimes we are not connected and we do not know how much we can win for working together. In any event, I do think that the stupid people are very few with access to artificial intelligence. And most of us, good people, better people, are the majority. So we should be able to control the stupid or bad people with AI if the good people with AI work together. So it is a concern, and I am obviously worried, but I think we will overcome this problem. Also because I do think that intrinsically artificial intelligence will be positive, will be good on its own, beyond humans. In fact, why do some people think humans are so good? We are horrible. We have been having wars in Europe for centuries, for example, or in many other parts of the world. So we humans are not only very intelligent, but very ethical. So I think artificial intelligence will probably be even more ethical than humans are today.
I think you're entirely right, Jose. Most people are actually pretty good inside. It's just a minority that, for whatever reason, started behaving in really nasty, dangerous ways. The problem is that many of these people come to positions of power. Some of them get their hands on weapons of mass destruction, whether it's sarin gas as used in the Tokyo Underground, or airliners, which some people managed to take over and use with such damage. So I'm with you. We need to find ways to demonstrate win-win scenarios that more people can work together with. But working together is actually quite hard. and we need the skill of collaboration, possibly the most important skill. I said earlier, I'm a big fan of education. I think the education syllabus needs to focus on helping people to collaborate and see these scenarios. And I know, Natasha, you have had a great deal of thought about the education for the
Well,
future.
I'm following the chat and I shouldn't do that. We should turn it off. In fact, I'm going to turn it off at the H+ Summit because I'm pulled over there and I'm listening to Jose and I'm listening to you, but I'm seeing this and I disagree with what Jay's saying. And so I'm disagreeing over here, but it should be here. Okay, so a couple points. Okay, so we've shifted the discussion away from politics per se towards psychology. And we haven't defined or delineated what area of psychology we're addressing, but we're looking at human nature and greed and things like that. I don't like using terms loosely, so we have to be really careful here. Human nature, we have behaviors, that is clear. If you want to theorize and debate about whose theory on human nature, that's a whole nother discussion, but there are basic behaviors that humans have. There's basic behaviors that my canine dog on the floor has. These are basic innate behaviors. Okay, now when you get into discussing and debating and richer intellectual discussion, then you can get into who says what's normal, and Andy Maya is the expert on that, on normal, the neo-normal and normalcy, and the damage normalcy is done to humans, which is a political hook to keep some people suppressed and other people, oh, they're good because they're this height and that weight and that color and whatnot. One thing that's really important I noticed from the discussion is that there's about capitalism and greed, and things are just going a little bit haywire, so I'm going to turn the chat off so I don't have to look at it because I disagree with so much that's being written over there, and I can't get rid of it. If we are looking at humans, who's good and who's not good, we're all not good. Let's be honest here, for God's sake. We all do things that we're ashamed of, that we, why did I do that? That we wish we hadn't done. No one is good through and through on every level. It's like a dilemma. It's based on the circumstance. You can make a decision that you think, oh, that's good. I'm being a lovely, benevolent human being, but it may affect someone else adversely. And you had no idea it was going to do that. So everything we do has a consequence, and we can't please everyone all the time. So inevitably, the bottom line is someone is going to be hurt. So now the issue becomes human versus AI. Okay, I'm going to take center stage on that, more of a centric view, that Jose is 100% AI, let them win the politics and let them do it. And David is saying, yes, that the AI could offer a more fair balance. Then we get into the ethics, and someone who's taught ethics for years, it's like, who's going to decide? Well, probably AI will be the decision maker since it lacks the emotionality and what's going on in the chat is why we can't decide, because people are just saying things without evidencing what they're saying. We will become the AI is my view. And I think that's the basic transhumanist view, that we won't be able to fight it, because if it becomes so much smarter than us, so much more capable than us on so many different levels, we're going to integrate with it just like we have with our smart device here and our computers. We integrate. So however that's done, hopefully it'll be done in a seamless way that won't affect anyone, and it'll be available to everyone. And Peter Diamandis' views on abundance, which were taken from Eric Drexler, is something that we all subscribe to. So I look forward to beyond capitalism, but I don't think capitalism is bad. It's the people who are bad. Beyond this right, left, up, down, to where there's a sense of responsibility, and that we understand how what we're doing affects others. And the only way that we can truly do that, there's no absolutes in the universe, but the best way we can do that is through assist, like when I designed Primo Posthuman or a whole body prosthetic. I have the meta brain in there, and I think that is probably a feasible, logical solution.
Many thanks, Natasha. Again, lots of fascinating ideas. The most fascinating is that in due course, we humans will merge with AI. But I want to ask that maybe we can set some of these longer term decisions to the side for now. We have got lots of shorter term, big political issues as well. For example, what was the 2020 US election themes going to be? So I'm going to turn now to Charlie for his comments, which is going to round off this set. And then we are going to take questions from the Q&A. I look at the Q&A window now. There are 6 questions that people have typed in. There were a few other non-question messages, which I've discarded, I'm afraid. Let's keep this question and answer window for questions. And 2 of them have been voted up a little bit. And I will take whichever questions have got the most upvotes in a group intelligence exercise. Charlie, what would you like to come back to on all that you've been listening to?
Oh yeah, I gotta have to say it's fun for me to listen to all these speakers. They're all brilliant. I particularly enjoy listening to Natasha and Jose and and Jay too. I do agree with what Natasha just said. I do think that and what you said, David, merging with technology, and then now we're talking about, that's education. That's just further down the road, and but that is going to make a big difference, because if we can merge with, and by the way, Elon Musk is already attempting it in his own way with Neuralink, with an interface. And that's rudimentary. I mean, we're going to have a much more sophisticated way of doing that without drilling holes in our heads. So I think that, but merging with technology is something we're definitely going to do, for sure. And that's going to elevate our brain power astronomically. So it's almost impossible to have a discussion about how that's going to play out. And I think even the emotions are going to be changed to a degree that they will be more benevolent, I think, because it'll just be logical to all of us to get along so that we can all survive. So I see why there's a certain logic beyond just the idea of we're going to be good. I think it makes sense to be so. So I think if we look at it that way, I think it's a positive, and I really look forward to that kind of stuff. If you want to talk about more immediate concerns, with the political issues, I know that in the recent campaigns, there was discussion about universal basic income, for example. Well, it's inevitable. I mean, I whether you like it or not, automation is gonna just be all over the place. I mean, pretty soon we're gonna have self-driving cars, and all those jobs are gone. So and when they ask the coal miners, the ones that own the coal mines, about, well, what if we reopen the coal mines? Can you bring back the jobs? The owner said, no, it's all gonna be automated. So if the jobs are keep going, it's inevitable that some version of UBI, universal basic income, is gonna have to be there. Now, does it have to be all cash or something like that? I don't know. This is the kind of things that have to be discussed, because we could supplement UBI with things like 3D printers in everybody's home, where you can have a lot of production that won't require where you need money for it. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to talk about there and discuss, but that's a whole nother situation that we have to look at, because you're going to have it's just going to be forced upon us. And by the way, as Natasha mentioned, when Peter Diamandis, and yes, you're right, Drexler said it first, talks about abundance, that's coming too. So that'll be another thing that's going to help distribute things where, universal basic income won't be as devastating to our economy as people might think. But okay, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Well, thanks very much. We may well come back to the question of UBI. I'd just like to put it on personal record that I think humans merging with AIs is no guarantee that we're going to end up with a better world. I personally think that superhuman humans might be as dangerous to the world as superhuman AIs, unless we get the ethics right, because there are many very powerful people, very intelligent people who are unfortunately dangerous in the world. And you can think of some of your favorite members of the criminal fraternity, drug smuggling fraternity, or even the politicians. But I am hopeful that AI can help us to work out the right ethics too, but I don't think we're going to do this unless we put ethics at the heart of our education. Let's come to the first question, which is from James Whitaker. James asks about, instead of electing politicians as we do currently, why don't we do it sort of randomly? Why don't like we pick jury members for court cases randomly. So what do you think about using stratified random sampling to elect politicians? There's a growing pool of evidence suggesting that diverse groups of people in citizens' assemblies, taking the time, as you do in a court of law, you take the time to explore, to deliberate. Would this be a better way of addressing some of the complex problems facing society today? Jose, do you want to answer that first?
Okay, I'll give it a try. Actually, that is a very interesting idea. And there are many new political ideas coming up. Just to give additionally two more, are what is called quadratic voting. This is something really, really interesting, quadratic voting, and the concept of liquid democracy. In fact, this weekend, yesterday, Friday, today, Saturday, and tomorrow, Sunday, there is another virtual conference also open, which is called Radical for Change. Radical for Change. And one of the creators or inventors of the idea of quadratic voting is speaking. He is called Glenn Weil. I think that is how you pronounce his last name, W-Y-E-L. In any event, this is this weekend, and you will listen about all of these ideas for the politics of the future. However, I just mentioned that I think artificial intelligence will do better than normal politicians, or at least normal politicians with artificial intelligence will do better than politicians without no artificial intelligence. So that is my quick answer, David.
Anybody else got views on citizens' assemblies, which have been worked quite nicely in some parts of the world, in the Republic of Ireland? Some very contentious issues over women's rights, abortions, gay rights for marriage were debated in citizens' assemblies, and people who initially had quite diverse opinions ended up saying, well, we still disagree, but we understand why we disagree, and we can see that this is now the consensus view, which changed Ireland quite remarkably over the last 15 years or so. Does anybody else think they are a good or a bad idea?
I have a comment. What's interesting is most people try to get out of jury duty, and it's not like a something that you want to do. So it's a really interesting idea, but I could just see everyone scrambling to get out the back door or change their citizenship so they don't have to do it. But it did. And this is why mind maps and there's no bad suggestion, no bad idea is great, because that triggered another idea. And so this is the other idea that original idea by our attendee suggested. We should have an Olympics. I mean, Olympics brings out the best. People train for it. They work hard for it. And then there's Olympics and people get there. Maybe our politicians should have to compete on some level that's outside the current modality or model for a pitch. It's just screwed. They're not answering any tests. They're not doing anything. They're not showing their intellectual prowess. They're just, tap dancing on stage. So it'd be really interesting if there was some really futuristic test or some situation that they had to succeed at to be able.
Jay.
Well, I would just add, it's an interesting idea about like randomly picking somebody, would you get a better candidate than someone that is elected through a democratic process? I've been thinking about this, and I think that, elected leaders, there seem to be three fundamental qualities. You need to, representativeness is one of them. So if you're going to do a sample, it's got to be stratified random, appropriately representative of the larger population, because you don't want tyranny of the minority or tyranny of the, but you do want representation. The second issue is that in regard to Jose's comment about AI and governance, it's like you do need intelligence. So you need a representative leader, but you need an intelligent leader. I think intelligence is key here. And if AI can be used to supplement human intelligence or surpass it and can be applied in the right way to enhance government, then that's certainly good. But the other thing, and I think which is missing perhaps in transhumanist arguments in politics, is that politics is based on a concept of human nature and values. So, what do you consider to be the key aspect of human nature? And of course, human nature is a moving target. You might argue that there's a given good political system given the way humans are now, right? Okay. But if humans change, then the politics, of course, have to change. And so that's clearly something that transhumanists would embrace. But I think that what we need to all think more about is philosophically, what are values? Because I do believe in objective values. For example, I think things like rationale, reason, logic, science, productivity, individualism, freedom, things like this, that any society of intelligent agents, whether it be robots or AIs or humans or biological organisms, I think that you could come up with an objectivist ethics, and that would need to inform politics. So I don't think we can have like a purely technological discussion of politics that's divorced from philosophy.
Right. Charlie, does the US Transhumanist Party have strong views on citizens' assemblies, or you personally?
Well, the USTP doesn't really have a strong view or any particular view that I'm aware of, but personally, I mean, I think we kind of have a system similar where, anybody can go and register to vote. I think the problem is that we have a system that is a corrupted, somewhat duopoly, where they're really not letting people get in there without billions of dollars or some really high goal or bar to achieve. I like the idea of being able to get more people involved. I liked Natasha's idea of having a kind of a Olympic or some kind of qualifying test, because and even what Jay just said, it's important to have intelligent leadership. It goes back to what I said when I first came on board on today's panel. Education's important, and part of the problem is, it would be nice to have an Olympic situation where you can have everybody compete, but the reason that we have primaries the way they are right now is more or less because we do have an electorate that isn't very well educated, sadly, and they gravitate to watch silliness like Donald Trump's one-liners, and that gets them voted. I mean, we need smarter people. Jose was referencing stupid people. Sadly, this might be the case, and we need a lot more intelligence. So we will be focusing on the most intelligent issues that are at stake, and there are a lot of them. And unfortunately, people right now, it's a personality contest, and that's just unacceptable if you are looking for competency. So that's my opinion on if you're going to have that kind of stuff where you have a random choices. I think people need to be qualified, and it has to be pretty stringent. I think we need strong intelligence, and I would like to see AI be a part of that. I think that's important. I look forward to us merging.
So you pointed out that there's currently a money hurdle, which makes it very difficult for many people to get into politics. And if we can find ways to reduce that money hurdle, then we will be able to draw upon the insights of a wider pool of candidates. I do like what the Transhumanist Party does online. You tend to have quite interesting voting mechanisms and discussion periods. And so, to my mind, the strength of democracy isn't just that we vote. The strength of democracy is we can actually take the time to explore ideas and then find out which ideas are the most interesting. And I think the Transhumanist Party in the US is actually pretty interesting in terms of its use of various methods. In terms of citizens' assemblies myself, I think they will supplement democracy, but I don't expect them to replace our elected representatives anytime soon for the reasons that were mentioned. Sometimes we really do need people who are experienced politicians taking some of these decisions, guided by the advice of citizens' assemblies and panel of scientists. And that brings us back to the question of education. I'd like to take the question from Peter Jackson. And we're all talking about it'd be nice if the people are more educated. Well, how do we go about, Peter asks, how do we go about persuading people to prioritize education, prioritize their own education or prioritize education for society as a whole? We've heard from Charlie that he would be prepared to spend more money on this. Do others agree? And are there other things that can be done to improve education generally?
Lifelong learning is crucial. I mean, it's something that I think that is necessary, and to promote education is vital. It's crucial.
How do we do it? How do we make people
all
interested
right.
in
Okay,
that?
now that's your question. Okay, as an academic, I look at the way some of the innovative schools have done it, Harvard, ASU, other schools, like EduX, taking it online. I've been teaching online and on ground for years now. And when, you know, the coronavirus came about, many universities and especially elementary schools and high schools had to shut down. They didn't know how to go online. So because I was teaching, I've been teaching at a tech school, that high-end technology, we already had test-driven being online. So we would teach in multiple modalities or platforms. So I think that future of education and the need for education has to be online 24/7. You mentioned David, that the USTP and it's groupthink, well, not groupthink in a negative way, but it's format, it's platform to bring people together. That's normal. Most political organizations have that. They have a way for the public to come together and voice their opinions and views. It's just that we don't hear about it that much because we're not involved in it. Maybe Jay does through the Libertarian Party, know what discussion is taking place. So I don't know how to answer your question articulately because I'm not sure what the question is, but yes to education, 2 thumbs up to education.
Fantastic.
Online is the best delivery. One area is gamification of education, because the school, again, where I've been teaching is, you know, high tech. Gaming is very important there. And I think that if we could find a way to get the education that we want to espouse and spread within the domain of gaming, that would behoove us, because there's a whole generation or multiple generations of people that spend most of their time in games, not on TV. I'm of the TV generation. Games are fine, but I like TV and I like movies. But students love games. If we could make games easier for all generations, even the older generation, I think it would be excellent and provide ways to educate about the future. Taking Jose's dictum there, I think is crucial.
So gamification, or the related idea, is serious games. Sounds a bit serious, but you know, the idea is that using games for serious purposes. And I saw today in the UK, there's an announcement that the doctors in the UK can now prescribe an application. It's an application for children who are prone to ADHD. They're very distracted, but there's a game that's been approved to use children to teach them in subtle ways, ways that reinforce the good elements of these children, that helps them. So games that help teach people principles at the same time, I think that's using technology for all of us. Jose, do you want to come in here?
Yes, I love that comment, Natasha, about gamification. In fact, that is so important because we need to make education fun. Sometimes people say edutainment, education, entertainment, especially on scientific, technological areas, in everything, obviously, from arts, literature, but science and technology also. I like to say that we humans, we are animals with technology. What makes us different is technology, and education is a type of technology. And so if we can make it entertaining and fun, and all types of education, again, I know because Natasha is also a lover of arts and drum and all of that, which are important. So we need to make that fun too. People need to learn about that. So in my political campaign also, I emphasized a lot about education because we need to create also a new world. If you look at my back, I am so happy this summer there will be 3 missions to Mars. Not 1, not 2, but 3. NASA, the USA, China, and the United Arab Emirates. The 3 are sending orbiters and rovers to Mars. There was a 4th one that was postponed from the European Union with Russia. It has been delayed for 2 years, but this is incredible. You know, we are going to conquer a new world. Our eyes should open. Our children should be happy to learn about this. One of the things that changed me personally is when I watched the Apollo landing. I was a very small child, but watching that humans could go to the moon was incredible. And in 2024, NASA has the new Artemis program, where they hope to send for the first time a woman and a man to the moon. Artemis is the Greek god of the moon and fertility, and she was the sister of Apollo. So we had Apollo before, now we have Artemis, and the first woman going to the moon in 2024, even if it is later. I mean, this is fantastic. We are going to go to the moon and to Mars and beyond.
I remember that one of the astronauts from Apollo 8, which went round the moon and the Earth in a kind of figure of 8, they said we went all the way to the moon and discovered the Earth. The pictures that they took there inspired, for a while at least, more of the feeling that actually we should not be squabbling on this planet. We are all together. So I fully agree that we need transcendent visions to help us get out of our current rather parochial squabbles sometimes. We get stuck into our tribal disputes, which seem very important to us at the time. And if there's something bigger that can displace that, I think going to outer space is part of the answer. I think the bigger transhumanist visions of super longevity, super intelligence, super well-being, and I would add super democracy can play some of that role too. Thanks. Jay or Charlie, do you have any views on this topic?
I certainly do. So I'm an educator myself. I'm a professor and I've been teaching for 25 years. It's hard to believe. But as a pro-technologist, I think that we could do a better job integrating technology into the classroom than we currently do, because most teachers still just write on the board, or they have a PowerPoint slide or something, which is fine. But if you look at the available technologies now with online interactive learning, I think those sorts of alternatives need to be explored better, both by existing institutions like universities and colleges bringing innovative use of technology into the classroom, and also allowing for educational alternatives like corporate sponsored schools, homeschooling, because technology now is an enabler, right? It allows people you don't need a PhD to be a good teacher. I mean, you can use technology to leverage your ability to teach. So I would like, for example, one of the things it's well, anyone can record a lecture, that's easy to do, but how do you deal with interactive? How do you get an AI to understand a question and respond intelligently to a question? We're already part of the way there. Look at Watson. We have, specialized learning systems, domain-specific systems that are very, very knowledgeable in particular areas. So I don't want to replace myself. I don't want to replace human beings. I think we should integrate with technology, but I don't think we're integrating technology into the classroom sufficiently yet.
And here I'm with you in a sense of supporting the liberty of organizations to try new things. I think the most interesting innovations in these fields will probably come not from the existing established educational institutes, although some of them are agile and far-seeing, but often they're constrained by the inertia of processes that have been put in place to solve the problems from the past. So I'm looking forward to progress being made by many new companies like the École 42, School 42 in France, using technology in remarkable ways to educate many more people than before. And hopefully one side effect of the terrible coronavirus situation is it's going to accelerate people finding out how to do more education online, more intelligently, more cheaply for everyone. Charlie, comments on how we can encourage more people to take charge of their own education?
Oh yeah, well, what you just said is important. That we hopefully the good thing that comes out of this crisis of COVID is that we do get more acclimated to the idea of doing things online, particularly education. It might seem a little awkward right now, but I think it's going to refine just like everything else, just the way cell phones used to be, big and cumbersome and not work great. But eventually we're gonna make online learning I think it's going to be just normal. In fact, I think going to learn is going to be awkward for the upcoming generations. I do like the idea of making it entertaining children, so they'll be more interested in it. I mean, obviously, when I make my music videos, I do it to make them entertaining, and I also try to put a positive spin on the future. So I know that that's an important aspect of education as well. I will make another comment regarding flights to Mars. It's exciting to be able to think that we're going to go to Mars. I think it's a big undertaking. And my only concern is the transhumanist, at least for me, with regard to my platform in the United States Transhumanist Party, our priority is to not die. And anything that might take away from that, I want to look at carefully. So I'd love to go to Mars, but I'm sure there are people that are 80 years old that are thinking, hey, can we put some of that money towards, Ben Goertzel's developments or Aubrey or something, so that can speed up a little bit. Now, I know there's probably enough wealth to go around to do all these things, but I'm just letting you know that as a transhumanist, I always think that death is wrong. And the most important thing really is life extension and super longevity.
Well, that takes us nicely on to the last question we're going to answer together, because the last question by Cornelius Holthoff suggests that we should actually raise our mind beyond humans, whether we're thinking of humans becoming longer lived. Cornelius asks, what about trans-animalism? He's thinking, Cornelius is thinking about enhancing life expectancy and resilience of pets or endangered species. In what ways is the discussion about trans-animalism different compared to transhumanism? Do you care about the environment? Does that figure in your thoughts? And I'm asking you to try and be just one more minute at the most, because we are coming up to past. And then I'm going to give you, after you answer this question, I'll give you one other chance to make final closing remarks. So any fans of animals in here? Or are you all humanists? Natasha?
Humans are animals. Let's start with that, okay? We're part of the animal kingdom. Okay, so I think what the attendee was asking, do we care about other, like our animal companions, endangered species, etc.? Alcor vitrifies cats and dogs, your animal companions. So yes, of course, my dog Oscar, who many of you know, have met, and
yes,
love of my life dog. He's at Alcor right now, vitrified, his brain. Yes, I mean, the fact that dogs only live, 15 years maximum around there is crazy. And they ought to live longer than humans. I mean, they're such incredibly kind and benevolent beings. Cats as well, maybe not so benevolent kind, but yes, of course, all animals, in fact, all life forms that contribute to the ecology. I don't think there's any question that I get asked this a lot by students all over the world. Doesn't transhumanism care about other animals? It's just so human-centered. I said, well, of course, if we don't take care of ourselves first, how can we take care of anyone else? So it's self-responsibility, take care of yourself first, and then pay it forward, share your knowledge.
Charlie, death is wrong. What about death of animals for our food?
The death of animals for our food?
Yes.
Is that what your question is?
Well, I'm just wondering, what do you think about this general area?
Yeah, I would say that, we have technology now where we're actually creating, meat in laboratory settings. And that's going to flourish pretty quickly because there's a big monetary market for it. And people are, I've heard people argue that people won't eat it or something like that. But, Beyond Meat came out, and that's made billions of dollars. Impossible Burger makes, there's so much money being made there that I think that just was a great bridge to what's coming with regard to the ability to create animal meat or products for people that like to eat meat in laboratory settings. And the reason it's better to do that is because it eliminates all the contamination that you get from animals in farms, in farm factories where there's disease, and obvious torture to the animals. So to me, I think that, the idea of getting, not eating animals is a great idea. It also would help, not contribute to the global warming, if you want to consider that. So there's a lot of pluses for it. And I do think technology is right at the precipice of doing this. And it's going to explode pretty soon, where you're going to see a lot of good types of meat. Because I was actually at an incubator in San Francisco about a year ago or so, and there were companies that were developing artificial fish, artificial pork, you know, and I don't mean artificial. I mean, they're actually taking the cells of the animals and then creating the meats in the laboratory settings. So all of it's coming soon, and we're gonna correct these terrible injustices that we do to animals.
So the same improvements in synthetic biology and in AI and in other technologies will have several benefits. They will help us to rejuvenate ourselves. They will help us to create meat that's in many ways healthier for us and for the environment and doesn't involve sentient beings being destroyed in such large scale as well, which is another reason to prioritize the underlying technologies more than just to keep on worrying about present day issues, important though they are. Jose, comments on trans-animalism?
Yes, actually, I like to say that we are trans monkeys. We are basically trans chimpanzees. We are 99% biologically equal to a chimpanzee. So if we are enhancing ourselves, I think we should be also kind to our cousins. The other monkeys. And other animals, obviously, because even a mouse is close to 90% genetically equal to humans. So yes, I am in favor of all of this because this is not the end. This is just the beginning. And talking about eating animals, I actually try not to eat animals. I am mostly vegetarian. And I think it is also good for the environment, and it is certainly very good for the animals if you don't eat them. And Charlie just explained that this is going to be a big business and a profitable business, ethical business, and environmentally friendly business. So I am all in favor for it. And also when we go to Mars, we will create also different types of foods. And basically we just need about 10 chemical elements, okay? We don't really need an animal. We just need some oxygen, hydrogen, calcium, potassium, nitrogen, etc. to make our food, because we ourselves are also chemically very simple. 70% water, and the other 30%, the most common, abundant, and cheap elements in the universe.
Jay, final comments on that question.
Yes, of course. Yeah, so I mean, to me, the issue devolves down to conscious experience. So if you have an animal that is capable of experiencing subjective reality, that it can feel pain, it can feel suffering, and by breeding it or killing it for food, you are causing it pain and suffering, and we can prevent that, then I think ethically we are obligated to do so. So, you know, these things are difficult to prove. We can't even prove that we are conscious because it's a subjective phenomenon, but I think it's fairly obvious that animals are, have subjective experiences and are capable of experiencing pain. So if we can prevent them from suffering, if that's within our power to do so, we as animals have empathy and we should understand and try to prevent that.
Mm-hmm. So we're almost out of time. In fact, we are beyond, but I'm going to give you 30 seconds each to have any closing messages that you think need to be emphasized. For those watching, I'll say that I'm going to copy the links from the chat window into the video recording of this event. So if there was something that you didn't have a chance to catch, you can do so then. We'll also tell people about the H+ Summit, how they can find out more about that. And there'll be links to some of the key ideas and projects of the different speakers. Let's go back to Charlie. What final comments would you like to highlight?
You know, I would just like to say that, you know, my background, it is about, you know, not only science, but entertainment and film and such. So I'll just kind of go over maybe a couple things that might be a little bit fun. You know, the idea of living and not dying has been with us for a long time, forever. I mean, you know, obviously, and there were famous quotations that have gone throughout history. You know, William Shakespeare back in the 1600s said it through Hamlet: to be or not to be, that is the question. And I think it's important that the word "the" should be emphasized there, that to be or not to be is the question. You know, the idea of death is not, it shouldn't be in debate at all. And throughout history, we've all not wanted to die, but it's only now in the last, say, 50 years or even less, that we actually have a chance to declare death as not an inevitable outcome, but as a curable disease. There were other quotes throughout history. Woody Allen, I'm sure Jose knows this one, but Woody Allen updated his talk about death, where he said in a recent panel, he was asked about, what do you think about, you've had your issues with death for a long time. What do you think about it now? And he says, well, I'd like to reaffirm that I'm still against death. So, it's good to see that it's important. There's been a lot of songs now about people not wanting to die. It's been around for in the 70s and the 80s, we had, Freddie Mercury singing, Who Wants to Live Forever? And the Bee Gees sang about staying alive. And more recently, just last year, you had Vampire Weekend, which is a band that came out with a song where they wrote the lyrics. I don't like living like this, but I don't want to die, or something like that. So there's a lot of movement in our entertainment zeitgeist that's really pushing this idea about not dying, and it's becoming more and more mainstream. And I'm really excited about that. So that's kind of what I wanted to leave you with, and I hope that we could have more discussions like this. And I wanted to thank you for having me.
Thanks. So we're hearing more humanitarian concerns that death is bad. I think we're also seeing some of the economic arguments coming to the fore too, that actually if we can live healthily, it's much better for the economy. There are economic arguments called the longevity dividend, which are gradually getting back into the public mind. As Jose mentioned, in the UK, the all-party parliamentary group for longevity. It's sensible to make this investment, but sadly, we're not doing it enough, which is why we need transhumanists of all political stripes sharing this vision. Natasha, what would you like to conclude with?
Thank you. It's been lovely. I enjoyed listening to everyone's views. One thing I'd like to say is, I'd like to reiterate that I think we need to see beyond political parties and consider political platforms. Congratulations, Charlie. Really mean that from the bottom of my heart, but I just don't think it's going to get anywhere. I mean, I think that we really need to put our money where our mouth is. And if we're going to be serious about changing regulation, legislation, laws, et cetera, for longevity, for morphological freedom, for the proactionary principle, for the culture of longevity, then we really need to hunker down and deal go back to school, all of us, and learn how to deal within the structures that we've got. Because even though it's a wonderful social group and all of that, and bless his heart, I value Zoltan Isvan very much. He's a friend, all that, but he never really ran for president until he ran for governor. And it's just, we have to be serious about that. I did run for election. I know how hard it is, and I won in Los Angeles, and that was not easy. I only won because I had a TV show that I hosted and produced on The Future. It wasn't anything I said that was particularly brilliant. It's just the right time, right place. And I talked about technology to clean up the environment. With the Green Party, that's the party I was with. Okay, looking at it today, I would love to run for senator. And I thought about it in Arizona. But I know that I have a history of stuff that could ruin me. And I cannot help but say that people will tweet things, write things, say things that are not true to damage other people. And any of us putting ourselves in a situation where we would damage the longevity industry or transhumanism, any of our businesses, our income, it's very serious stuff. And, we have to pay attention to this. We think it's all fun and great and wonderful and these groups that we have, but the bottom line is the economy means that our financial well-being keeps us alive, keeps us working, keeps us thinking, keeps us producing. And we have to take that very seriously. And I'm going to close on that because I don't want this to be about criticism. I want it to be about constructive education and learning and not put all of our ducks in one area to understand how it can be done effectively. Jose, you've done this. You went through the channels. Gabriel Rothblatt went through the channels of what is. Again, those channels aren't the prettiest. I don't like them either. But to get over here, you've got to go through it. I didn't want to go back to school to get a doctorate, but I did. 7 years, lots of money, but I have it and I earned it. So it gave me a whole vocabulary and sense of understanding that I wouldn't have had unless I did it. So I'm very pragmatic. I'm going to follow the transhumanist rational optimism or pragmatism and looking about politics and what we need to do. And with a legal background, as you all know, we're not going to get there unless we follow the law, and the law is solid. Until we can change the law from the inside out, we just can't mob in the streets like so many people are doing. Two things I want to add, just very quickly. Tribalist view. Jay, you mentioned this in your incredible, informative, and well-designed, well-laid out presentation, but we all have to be careful about that tribalism. Techno-progressive tribalism, libertarian tribalism, USTP tribalism, and I see it. And there's areas that I love and areas not so much. And the other is concentration of power. Well, we've noticed through the COVID-19, a large concentration of power was grassroots. It was Black Lives, or it is Black Lives Matter, but that everyone is saying lives do matter. And we're taking down these rigid, conservative, uninformed structures through the mob mentality. So concentration of power outside the political can happen if we concentrate it effectively. That's why I will go with a PAC rather than a political party. Thank you.
So there's vision in your politics, but you want to emphasize pragmatic steps forwards and being serious about it. There are serious issues that need to be navigated, and we can joke, and we should joke, and we should help each other to reduce the stress. But in the end, there's a lot of hard work ahead, and it's probably going to need multiple approaches which are coordinated informally and formally. I like that vision. Thank you so much. Jose, final 30 seconds for you. See if your 30 seconds is shorter or longer than Natasha's.
It will be 5 quick ideas. Number 1, join Humanity Plus. We are organizing a lot of events, one online next month in July, and then Transvision in Madrid, and then Transvision in Los Angeles. Also, today, there are 2 articles about transhumanism in the Wall Street Journal. That is incredible, and Humanity Plus is mentioned in the Wall Street Journal. Number 2, as I mentioned before, I am not worried about artificial intelligence, but I am worried about human stupidity. Number 3, many people today are considering aging a disease, but the good news, it is a curable disease. Curable disease, as in the book with David Wood, my fantastic co-author, The Death of Death. Number 4, Martians, we will go to Mars, to Mars, and the first Martians will be humans. Isn't that exciting? The first Martians will be humans. And the last point is, we live in truly incredible times. And I believe that in the next 20 years, we are going to see more changes than in the last 2,000 years. I repeat, in the next 2 decades, more changes than in the last 2 millennia. So welcome to the future, the land of opportunity, wealth, life, intelligence, and happiness.
Fantastic. Jay.
So just, very quickly, because I know we're running out of time. I don't have 5 points. I think I have maybe 2 or 3, so I'll keep it quick. First of all is that let's not be afraid of technology. I think people look at transhumanism and they get scared. They think genetic engineered crops and Frankencorn, but they don't understand the science. They don't understand, that genetic engineering is nothing more than applied evolution and molecular biology. So technology is a tool. It's not, it can be used as a weapon. It can be used for benefits and good. So as transhumanists, we embrace technology, and I think we should advocate for technology, which we do. But I think we need to show that technology and science work, right? Magic and mysticism and these sorts of things don't work. So we need to sell technology as sexy, as a positive thing. And also, I just would also emphasize the importance of learning, education, and thinking multimodally. I think that too often we are inside certain particular bins. We're a transhumanist, or we're this, or we're that, or that. I think the more you learn about different areas, the more you learn about economics and politics and philosophy and psychology, and the more you integrate your learning, the better you understand the world and the more informed you can be about any one of those different areas. So I really advocate interdisciplinary thinking as a way to advancing a lot of these ideas.
So you highlighted education, you highlighted what technology can accomplish, you highlighted the benefits of having a scientific mindset, and this interdisciplinary approach, which I might also call collaboration, possibly the most important skill. Something we've been trying to do in this event and something to which London Futurists is committed to. Thanks all of you for taking part in this, sharing your very valuable time and insights. Keep watching out online for more news of other London Futurist events. Goodbye.
Live long and prosper. Live
Thank you
long
very
and
much,
prosper.
David.
Thank you.
I can't do it.